Welcome back to Common Ground and Inside Look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now on this side of the program, we've got Ed Flynn, who's running for the City Council to represent District 2. Clearly, you know the Flynn name, historic name in the city of Boston, but equally, not only just the name, but the dedication to public service is really what's important here. And so, Ed, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Really appreciate having you.
It's great to be with you, Sheriff.
So tell the viewers a little bit about why you want to run for this seat and why you want to serve on the City Council.
Well, I've worked in this district my entire life. I'm currently a probation officer at Suffolk Superior Court, working on the reentry initiative, helping people coming out of jail and prison. I know you're doing an excellent job and your staff is doing an excellent job also on reentry, as is the mayor. But I want to try to help people across the district, regardless of what neighborhood you come from, giving people the opportunity to, we have a great economy in Boston, making sure that everybody can participate in the great economy, have access to jobs, job training, affordable housing. Criminal justice reform is also an important issue. I've had the opportunity, maybe the privilege, I guess, to serve in the Navy for 25 years. And so I've worked hard my whole life. Although my father was in politics, he served as the mayor. I earned everything, and I'm proud of everything that I've earned so far. But it was a lot of hard work, but I have a great deal of respect for the people of this district and for the city. And I'm just working as hard as I can across the district and trying to be responsible and responsive to the needs of the voters and constituents.
So let's start with that. When you talk about communities, the community not only that you would be serving as City Council, but the greater picture. One of the things that gives me pause is housing and the cost of housing, and the fact that there's a lot of structures going up that really aren't what I would call affordable housing. It's not workforce development priced. It's not priced for low income or moderate income people. Talk to me about the need for quality housing so that we can keep some of these families intact in the communities that their families may have been in for generations, but now they can no longer afford that. How do you address that, the need for real quality, affordable housing?
Right, I think that's the number one issue facing the city right now. Affordable housing, making sure young people have access to affordable housing. They want to live in the city. And as well as elderly people that want to stay in the city, that want to stay in their current housing. I think we need to make sure that when we do build housing, we're building a lot of luxury housing, but we also need to make sure that there's workforce housing, there's senior housing, and there's housing for the poor and for the needy. And public housing is also another important issue. I know the federal government has almost gotten out of the business of public housing, funding housing. We have an excellent administrator, Bill McGonigal, at the Boston Housing Authority. District 2 has a lot of public housing developments in it. But I want to work hard, too, to make sure that those residents in public housing are treated fairly and treated with respect. And again, I know that Bill McGonigal is doing an excellent job, and the mayor is doing an excellent job as well. But I want to work with those folks to make sure that Boston remains a city not just for the wealthy, but for the poor, for the working people, for the elderly, for the disabled. I'd like to see some veteran housing in the city as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of homelessness, and there are a fair amount of veterans that are still living on the streets. Although I know that Mayor Walsh is really wrapping his arms around that.
Right.
What's your thoughts on the need to get people into some sort of stable living situation so that they're not living on the streets? Who would you talk to, or how would you go about putting something in place to effectuate that?
Yeah, I think that's an important issue. I know, as you mentioned, veteran homelessness. President Obama had a major initiative to make sure that those veterans that are returning home had a house. He did a great job in that regard, as did the mayor. And I would want to work hard with city officials, with state officials, in making sure that there is funding to house our returning veterans and house our seniors as well. But it's bringing people together. I have a great relationship with Congressman Lynch as well, and our state legislators, which is Nick Collins and Linda Forey. But working hard, working closely with those officials and Michael Flaherty, but making sure that we come together, we develop a plan, working closely with the mayor's office, making sure that there is housing for workers, for the elderly, for returning veterans, and for our seniors. It takes all levels of government, and it takes nonprofits as well to work together. Those are the skills I've learned over the years in the military. It's about leadership, and I want to work hard on that regard as well.
Talk to me about education and the need for good, not just charter schools, but public schools. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, public schools. My son is a student at the public school in Boston, Josiah Quincy School. He's receiving an excellent education. It's in Chinatown. But I want to work hard to make sure every child also receives an excellent education as well. The Quincy School has a great after-school program, before-school program, nutritional program, athletic program. I think that's key. They have a great orchestra, music program. And, I would work hard. I just got the endorsement from the Boston Teachers Union this week.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and I'm proud of that, but I know that Teachers Union believes in me and my vision also for the district in terms of making sure that every child has a quality public education in Boston. And as a city councilor, making sure at budget time that there's enough funding in the school department to make sure that our children receive the best possible education they can. And I'd love to see more mental health counselors in our schools. I'm a strong advocate of special education, making sure that our special education program is the best it can be, making sure that those parents are comfortable with the quality of education their child is receiving as well.
What do you think about vocational education?
Vocational is very important. I went to a vocational technical high school, Don Bosco, also in Chinatown. It's closed now, but I received a good education. I was in the graphic arts program. Other students were in the electronics program or carpentry program, but you receive a great skill and you're able to get a good paying job after high school.
And there's the key.
Yeah, that's the key. It's school to career.
Right.
I know Madison Park is struggling. It should be the best possible vocational technical program in the city. But I'm confident that the school department will work closely to make sure that the Madison Park gets the funding it needs to be an excellent school in Boston, making sure all our students have access to a great school like that. Although it is struggling, it will eventually be a great school again.
And the thing about vocational education is that a lot of people really don't want to go on to college, but clearly they need a vocation. They need something that's going to allow them to put a roof over their head, food on the table, and to take care of their families. And look, I recently had a plumber in to do some work at my house, and he walked away with a nice nice check. So I believe mightily in vocational education. To that end, jobs and job training programs. Where do you stand on that, and how would you work with the city council to get more of those things in play, and also to get more folk into the unions? A lot of the union personnel are what they call graying or on their way to retirement, and so that's going to be a wide open field for more bodies to come in. How do you work with the communities and the other councilors to get more attention focused on jobs and job training programs?
Right, that's a great question. We have a booming economy, especially the South Boston waterfront. I want to make sure that our workforce in the city is able to get those jobs in the waterfront, regardless of what area of the city you're from. But I do think, as you mentioned, vocational and technical training, I think there's an important role for our community colleges to play as well, making sure that we're educating and training our students on where the jobs are. I had the opportunity to work in the Clinton administration at the Labor Department, and that was the number one question the secretary would always ask: where are the jobs? So you want to make sure you educate and train the workforce so that they're able to get a good paying job in the booming Boston economy. And that includes everybody that have been left out of the economy as well, making sure that our communities of color also have access to these job training programs, have jobs. I believe strongly in the Boston jobs policy, Boston jobs for Boston residents. I think the mayor's doing a great job on that regard. I want to make sure that the economy is strong for everybody, for women and people of color, and making sure that our building trades continue to educate and train our young people so that they were also able to get a good paying job.
Let me ask you about pay equity, because when you look at the situation where you have a male and a female doing the same job,
Right.
But the male oftentimes may make more money than the female, and there's empirical data that speaks to the fact that if there's more money coming into the household, if the wife or the mother in that household is on par with the male in that household, you've got more disposable cash to not only take care of the household needs, but then to also get your kids in different programs, be it athletic or academic. Where do you stand on pay equity?
I think it's an important issue. I want to work with the city council. I know they're doing a great job on that issue, but I want to make sure that women receive the same level of pay that a man does for the same job. And that is also encouraging the private sector to make sure that they're paying women the same rate as a man, and making sure our government is also doing the same thing. I'd love to see a study to see where we're currently at in the city and in the state, making sure that the economy is working for everybody, especially for our women, to make sure that their pay is the same as a man, but to learn from that study and to see what's working and what's not working, and make changes, and work with a lot of great people that have been working on that issue for many years. I think it's a critical issue. My wife is working in Boston. I want to see her making the same wage as a man. I have a young teenage daughter also. Those are important issues for me. I grew up in a household of 4 sisters that work. In my community in South Boston, it's the women that always worked hard as well, and they take care of the children, and they're involved in the schools, they're involved in the athletic program. So I want to make sure that that's a top issue for me, making sure that our women receive the same wage as a man.
Should the minimum wage be $15, or should it stay where it's presently at?
I think it should be 15. I think it should be even be higher than that. I'd love to see a family wage. Even $15 an hour is, you really can't afford to support your family on that. Right. But I'd love to see a family wage. When I was at the Labor Department, I worked on the initiative to increase the federal minimum wage back in the mid 90s. But I think we need to make sure that people working hard in the city have a decent family wage, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector. And I know our unions are doing a great job to making sure that our workforce is trained, but also that they're advocating for decent pay for our workers as well. So I would strongly support a family wage and that $15.
I want you to talk to me about criminal justice, but let's start with domestic violence. What's your thoughts on domestic violence and how that situation needs to be addressed?
Yes, just last week I had a statement that I put out in a press conference about domestic violence. It's a critical issue, and that's the first thing I want to advocate for as a city councilor, is have a separate committee on domestic violence, and in making sure that we have the right information, reporting, education, training, making sure women know what their rights are, where to go during such a situation, but also educating men as well about domestic violence and why it's such a terrible issue in our society, and being there for our women to make sure that if there is an incident, that they're treated with respect and dignity at the hospital, that our police, public safety also follow up, and that they're responsive, making sure that our victims are treated fairly in the court system as well. As a probation officer, I've dealt with that issue for 9 years, and it's discouraging seeing people coming in on that type of issue, but it's, the number one issue is public safety, making sure that the victim in the case is always treated fairly, but is safe. That's the key component. So I'm proud to work on that issue, but I want to learn more and also be part of that issue as we go forward as well.
So this country incarcerates more of its citizens than any major country on the planet, any nation on the planet. Somewhere near 2.5 million people. The correction system spends about $80 billion, with a B, $80 billion annually to incarcerate people. What's your thoughts on incarceration, mandatory minimum sentences, whether they should stay or whether they should go? I'm curious as to what you think.
Yeah, right. On that issue, you know, I can speak about my experience as a probation officer, and you know, it's very difficult for young people coming out of jail, coming out of prison to get a decent job. Core reform is important. I know Governor Patrick did a great job on core reform, as did the legislature, but we can even go further than that. If you have a criminal record, it shouldn't be a sentence that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
People have made mistakes, and they may have made 2 mistakes or 3 mistakes, but they're coming back to the community, and they're coming back to the neighborhood, and they do need housing, they do need job training, they do need to be treated with respect. We also have to make sure the public is safe. But one of your earlier question, you know, the Boston building trades are also doing a great job in hiring a lot of people coming out of jail, out of prison, giving them an opportunity to work in the apprenticeship program.
Right.
And you know, so I'd like to acknowledge the building trades are doing great work, but we have to make sure that those coming out of jail and prison are welcomed back and have an opportunity to, you know, contribute to society.
Right.
Because after all, they're our family, they're our neighbor. They may have made mistakes,
Right.
But we want to work with them to make sure that they can get back on the right track.
So representing District 2, each February, March, you have the St. Patty's Day Parade
Right.
that goes through District 2. And I will say, full disclosure, that Mayor Flynn has invited me over to his home a couple of times after the parade and had a blast. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really appreciate that. That's really cool. But there's this discussion about whether or not certain groups, i.e. LGBT groups, should or should not be allowed to participate in that parade. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there was a big controversy last year. I'm active in the veterans movement in South Boston. I strongly advocated for out-vets to march in the parade. I'm going to continue to make sure that the parade is inclusive. I worked with the parade committee. I know they made a terrible mistake. And again, I always supported out-vets and I support Boston Pride, but they made a terrible mistake barring out-vets. But I worked with them to make sure that there's a reorganization of the parade committee. There's a lot of younger veterans that worked hard to make sure that it's an inclusive parade for everybody. And that's not reflective of what, you know, that decision that they made to exclude a gay and lesbian veterans group. That wasn't reflective of the people of South Boston. But our community came together. It was led by a lot of young veterans at the Perkins Post. Community people, veterans, non-veterans, our elected officials played a critical role and were part of the process. I know yourself, Sheriff, you were there advocating for equality for everybody during the parade. So everybody came together to make sure that South Boston, but our whole city is a welcoming city, which it is. And we're going to continue to work hard on that issue. And you know, South Boston St. Patrick's Day Parade is open for everybody. And it's a diverse parade, and we're proud of that.
So this state and this nation is being challenged mightily by the opiate scourge, you know, and we're losing too many young folk. Families and communities are being negatively impacted by that. As a city councilor, how would you address the need to put a halt to, slow down the progression of opiates being just running rampant throughout our country and our state?
Right, that's an issue that's a national issue. I think a lot of medical professionals, unfortunately, are overprescribing pain medication. I think we need to look at that law again to make sure that you know, our hospitals are giving the right medication at the right time, and that they're not overprescribing drugs that our patients may or may not need. I also want to make sure that those that are suffering from drugs and alcohol have the opportunity to get into a good drug treatment program on demand. We need that. You know, those suffering from drugs need that type of program. They're our children, they're our sons, our daughters, our neighbor, our kid. And, you know, giving them the opportunity to get into treatment is critical. And, you know, it takes everybody. It takes citizens, it takes cities, state and federal, officials to continue to come together to make sure that our streets are safe, but also those that are dealing with drugs have the opportunity to get into a treatment program. I met with John McGann yesterday at the Gavin House in South Boston.
Yeah, great guy.
Great guy, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he has an excellent residential program across several of them across the city. But we need more of those, and we need more funding for those types of programs. And I'm going to work hard on the city council to make sure that we're able to help people into not only to detox, but also into a long-term residential program as well.
Yeah, and you're right. There are not enough mental health or substance abuse beds out there. And so I'm heartened to hear that you really want to wrap your arms around that particular situation. Talk to me about immigration. Now, if you hear what's going on the national level, the wall, the side, and all of that noise, just about everybody in this country came from somewhere else.
Right.
Their relatives came, their ancestors came from someplace else. That was kind of the thing about coming to the United States, is that you could come here and realize your dreams,
Right.
take care of your family, improve your station in life. And now we seem to be taking several steps backwards when you talk about people being able to immigrate into this country. Where do you come down on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Boston, especially, is an immigrant city. It has a great immigrant past, a great immigrant heritage. Also, Boston has always been a welcoming city. It's been welcoming to the Irish, to the Italians, to the Polish. But we also have to make sure that we're welcoming to the next generation of people, whether they're in South America or throughout Europe or in Africa.
Right.
Making sure that those people that come here to the United States have an opportunity to live the American dream. I know we made many steps backwards with the election of President Trump on many issues. My wife and my daughter and my son, we had the opportunity to go to New Hampshire at least 10 times, campaigning for Hillary Clinton. So we were disappointed in the results, but immigration is an important issue, but Boston is an immigrant city. I know our mayor is doing a great job on that regard, but I want to make sure that our immigrants that are coming here to the United States are able to participate in the American dream. They're good people. And they want to be part of the process. They want to give back. They want to raise their family. They want to work, and that's where I stand on that issue. I'm proud to be a strong supporter of our immigrant community, documented, undocumented. I'm going to be there for our community, as has my father when he was mayor and a city council. He was always there for the immigrants of Boston. So I'm proud of my family's past on that issue as well.
So we're just about out of time. I've got about 30, 35 seconds left. I want you to look into that camera over there and talk to the viewers and tell them why they should give you their vote to be the next city councilor to represent that district.
Thank you, Sheriff. It was great to be with you, and I just want to respectfully ask the viewers in District 2 if they'd respectfully consider voting for me on November 7th. I have the experience, the education. I've worked hard my whole life working in the Clinton administration, serving 25 years in the U.S. Navy in the Persian Gulf, other locations. As a probation officer, I try to treat people with respect and dignity, try to work hard my whole life, raising my family here in Boston. And just again, want to work hard on your behalf of the residents of District 2. And something I'm very proud of is working hard, returning phone calls, constituent services. That's a key part of the city councilor's job, and I'll be there for the people of District 2.
Mr. Flynn, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate what you have to say, and we wish you Godspeed.
Thank you, Sheriff. It's great to be with you.
All right, folks, that's it for today. We're out of time. We're out of here. We'll be back again next week. So until then, you take care. Peace.